It's shiny. It's awesome. It's cool. It's a piece of hardware that I can give for my baby boy.
Porque eu não comi nada antes.
You know, absolutely. Hold on, I'm talking, brother. 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 Hold on, I'm talking, brother.
Hello, and welcome back to Hold On, I'm Talking, Brother. My name is Joe Greenwood, and you are listening to our review of the Arnold Allen versus Calvin Kattar card from Saturday night, as well as a preview of the Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos card this upcoming Saturday. Tom, on a scale of Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum all the way down to Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva, where does the excitement level for you sit for these cards?
Well, we've seen worse this year, Joe. So
have we?
On the UFC. Yeah. UFC has been putting in some new lows for me. Do you want me to remind you of the Dern card a couple of weeks back?
Oh God! Oh,
yes.
That was a dirge, wasn't it?
So in that context, Joe, I am moderately interested.
Right. Moderately interested. That's great. Listeners, tune in. Keep tuning into this episode for our moderately interested takes on these cards. All right, let's stop mucking around. Let's get straight to it. Let's get to the main event from Saturday night. Arnold Allen versus Calvin Kattar in the featherweight division ends in the second round. TKO for Arnold Allen. Sounds good, right? Wrong. It was bad. Calvin Kattar blew out his knee in the first round. Continued the fight for some reason. And then his knee blew out again in the second round. And Arnold Allen swarmed him, got the TKO. And no one left there happy at all.
No, certainly not Arnold Allen. This was his chance for a statement win, following up on his knockout of Dan Hooker in London earlier this year. Finally gets a top 5 guy, a man coming off a good win over Giga Chikadze. Not the win Allen was looking for, but we did see him in the first round. How do you feel that one went, Joe?
That first round, I gave it to Allen. There was a moment in that where I actually thought Allen was going to finish him, where he landed a left straight, and then you could see like Kattar paused and was slightly rocked, and then Allen went and swarmed him against the cage and started unloading. I thought, like, oh, he's going to finish him, he's going to unload. And then he just took a step back, and he's just like, no, I'm going to measure this, I'm going to finish, I'm going to take my time here, which was a sensible decision. However, if he had finished him there before the knee incident, that would have been major statement win, and in fact probably would have been clear number one contender Arnold Allen in the featherweight division.
Yeah, certainly would have been. That was quite the moment. At the time, I thought the measured approach was right from Allen.
Same.
You know, he had that same pause against Dan Hooker, and then
yes.
he was like, "Have it, I'm out of that."
Yes. Yeah.
And just unleashed. But I think Kattar's a slightly more dangerous beast. Did anything about that first round surprise you? I mean, obviously Calvin, he looked so good against Giga Chikadze last time out.
Well, no, Josh Emmett was his last fight.
Sorry, yes.
Which he did look good in that.
He didn't shame himself in that fight. A lot of people felt he won that one, too.
Yeah, I think most people did. I think he did. But again, one of those where I'm not mad that Emmett won. I was actually surprised that Allen damaged Kattar as quickly as he did, and that Kattar had that level of reaction, because even against Holloway, he didn't have that sort of reaction like that, where you could see he was visibly stunned, whereas against Holloway, he was just basically put through the meat grinder and was just somehow still walking for some reason.
Death by 1,000 cuts in that fight.
Yeah. Did you see the statistic last week where Calvin Kattar has absorbed more significant strikes than Andrei Arlovski in the UFC?
Yeah, it's funny how these stats come to our attention. I mean, that is off the back of that Holloway fight. I think he is the record holder already in absorbing the most strikes in one fight.
Well, yeah, I think also the guys he has faced recently as well. I mean, Josh Emmett, all gas, no brakes. Giga Chikadze, who is a good kickboxer, but Kattar worked him really. Obviously the Holloway one, Shane Burgos as well. You forget that. Was that in his debut that he fought Burgos as well? He's not fighting. He's not fighting like reserved John Fitch style wrestlers who are just going to pull him to the mat and just keep pulling him down. He's facing guys who are going to push forward.
Yeah, well, of course, part of that is that Calvin Kattar does have pretty solid takedown defense as well.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Able to keep the
91%, I believe, takedown
Right.
defense accuracy.
So that's how you end up beating Arlovsky for strikes absorbed. And Arlovsky on this card also demonstrating how to absorb less strikes.
Yeah, what, by getting subbed in the first...
Getting mushed in the blink of an eye. Would you want to see more of this, Alan versus Kattar?
No. I think Alan should move on. I think, actually, the booking idea that came into my head was have an interim featherweight title fight underneath Volkanovski versus Makhachev, and I would have it be Emmett versus Allen. Like maybe
Emmett versus Allen. Those are the clear two standouts.
Yeah, I don't see the argument for Yair Rodriguez. He's got, a cheesed win over Ortega, and then before that, I think he had, what was his previous fight before that? Holloway. He had the weird one with Jeremy Stevens as well, where he had this
which he then
twice.
But he came back and closed that chapter.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
I don't think
a little bit patchy. You'd like to see one of those again, that signature win, kind of what Alan was looking for here.
Yeah.
But of course, Rodriguez, he does have the profile.
Does
coming
he?
off of I think in the
does he
in the Hispanic community, Joe, which we have great relations with on Holding.
Of course, yes, very very deep-rooted relationships.
They have acknowledged that Yair is indeed one of the boys. I think he's up there with Marino, for the Mexican crowd. So
fair enough.
There is that.
But I guess it goes
Sean
back
O'Malley
to that.
Of featherweight.
I guess so. But I mean, maybe it's that. I don't know if you saw that interview with Javier Mendez post Makhachev Oliveira, where he says the fight that should be made is Makhachev Dariush, but we're also in an entertainment business as well, so that's why we're facing Volkanovski next. And it's like, yeah, I guess, Yair versus Emmett, Yair versus Allen is, quote, more exciting or maybe more appealing to a slightly larger fan base. But if we're talking about this as an actual sport, and that's how I like to think of it anyway, any matchup of those three is good. The correct matchup, though, is Emmett versus Allen. The problem is, as we saw with the post-fight promo, is that Arnold Allen is maybe actually the most English fighter we've got. Like, you look at like Darren Till, Paddy Pimblett, like these big personalities, loud on the mic, whatever else. The true English fighter is Arnold Allen. Arnold, mate, call out your next fight. You want a title shot? And he's just like, that'd be nice to get a title shot. I think, I do deserve that. Yeah, that'd be nice. It's like, Arnold, mate. You could see he was disappointed with the fight, because if he had like knocked Kattar out, I think if he had maybe had a bit more fire in him, he would have given that better promo. And you could see that Bisping was like desperately like, please Arnold, mate, I'm backing you here, pal. Come on, I'm giving you the setup. Call out Volkanovski and say, I'll face you in Australia.
Slap that bald head around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like, really insulted him. Whereas, it's the same thing with Emmett, isn't it? It was just like, gee, shucks, mister. I can't wait to have my title fight. And Dana's just shaking his head. You are not getting a title fight.
No, and Joe, how enthusiastic are you about seeing these guys fight?
What, Allen versus Volkanovski?
Yeah, I mean, all right. You can have one. You can have Allen Volkanovski, or you can have Makhachev Volkanovski in Australia. The other fight cannot.
Well, I think Volkanovski loses both of those fights anyway, so it doesn't really matter inside.
Eyebrows are raised.
I honestly think, out of the top contenders at featherweight, I think Arnold Allen is the toughest fight for Volkanovski.
I think that's a reasonable summation. More so because we've seen the limits of most of the other fighters in the division, and we've seen how Volkanovski's grown. Whereas with Allen, he leaves more questions. What is it you're seeing Allen's game in particular? You think he's
the speed,
Volkanovski with?
The speed, hand speed, I think, and also as we saw on Saturday, doesn't need to like show a lot to throw his shots. Like, he just like really blasted Kattar with that left hand without much setup. I think that would be a real challenge for Volkanovski. I think Volkanovski, I say that Allen would beat him. In my heart, I would want Arnold Allen to win, because obviously English fighter. I would want him to win it, but I think Volkanovski would be able to figure him out and take away those later rounds from there. I also just think it's a much more competitive fight than the Makhachev one. Like, that's more competitive. It's more enticing, the Makhachev fight, but I think the Allen one is more competitive.
Well, that remains to be seen. I don't know. I need some time for that to sink in, Joe. That's
yeah.
You
We got plenty of time.
You knocked me aside with that.
Okay, fair enough. But
yeah, you've said it now. You said Volkanovski's going to lose to Arnold Allen. That's a hell of a take there, Joe.
I think
careers are made and lost on statements like that.
I think out of the top guys, I think Allen is the most likely to beat
Sounds
him.
a little bit like you're walking it back now, Joe.
No.
It sounds like you're walking it back.
No.
I agree that of the top guys, Allen is the most compelling. That is not the same as saying I think Arnold Allen will beat Volkanovski.
I haven't walked that back. Did I say I was walking that back?
Can you say it for us again?
Arnold Allen will beat Alexander Volkanovski at some point in his career.
You mean like after they both retired, it's kind of Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz?
I think that... Yeah, I want him to win. That's the main issue as well. Because also, like, Arnold Allen, bless him, he is quite boring. And so for him to be a UFC champion would be hilarious as well. So
all of the messaging over the last few years about Britannia Unchained and, you know, I think that's got to you, Joe.
No,
I think you got the blinkers on.
Anyway, let's talk about featherweight. Well, let's talk about Calvin Kattar, actually. Let's not show the disrespect here. Before we recorded, I said to you, I think Kattar is done in terms of featherweight contenders. And I stand by it, Tom. I think he's done. He's going to be 35, 36 in January. He's blown his knee out. He's taken a historic beating off Max Holloway in his career. He says he wants to take that Charles Oliveira route to the title where no one can ever doubt that he didn't earn it. That Michael Bisping route, you know. But you're going to be off for a long time with this knee injury. And you're going to come back and Bryce Mitchell, Topuria, Evloev, even Jourdain, maybe even someone like Nathaniel Wood is going to be further up there. Jack Shaw moving up to featherweight as well from bantamweight. These guys are going to be laced through the rankings. Do you really think Calvin Kattar, at 36 years old, after a bad knee injury, is going to be able to beat these guys? In my mind's eye, no.
No, it's a tough ask. It's a tough ask, especially if there is any vulnerability remaining in that knee. What you said pre-pod was you're more dismissive of his caliber as a fighter. That was the impression you gave me. I think it's okay to say that maybe he's not going to make it to the title picture anymore, but I don't see him fading from the rankings entirely just yet. He is only 34, just to clear that up, turning 35 in half a year from now. I think he will have a few more signature fights in the UFC.
Yeah, I think he'll have signature fights, but I think my worry for him is that he'll still be ranked highly when he comes back, maybe, 7, maybe around about 7 or 8. And I think he might become a sitting target for some of these guys that are going to move up through the rankings. Bantamweight, featherweight, these are divisions that are going to fill out continually, because like MMA in general, the talent pool tends to be in the lighter weight classes. And, he's in this division with this sort of injury. You saw it with Josh Emmett. Maybe he could take that Emmett sort of run of just grinding it out and somehow getting through and getting these wins and getting himself into his contender status. But I think it's unlikely. Very talented fighter, very exciting fighter. But I think him getting a title shot, I don't see it happening, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, you've laid out the blueprint there. Josh Emmett obviously blew his knee out in pretty brutal fashion, kind of putting it all on the line for us, back against Dan Ige, wasn't it?
No, Burgos.
No, Burgos, June of 2020. And obviously came back. He's going to be 38, Josh Emmett, in March. He's here. You just mentioned it. You've lined him up for the interim belt. So
Yeah, he can do it, but I feel like it's unlikely. That's all. Right, should we talk about the rest of what was on this card? Co-main event, Max Griffin defeats Tim Means by split decision. Griffin's on a slight run now. Is that his 4th win in a row, I believe, for Max Griffin?
Who are those wins, though, Joe? Who are they? Who has he actually beat?
Well, I say that he's on a 4-fight win streak. He's on a 1-fight win streak. My mistake. I forgot he lost to Neil Magny. He beat Tim Means, and he beat Carlos Condit and Keenan Song.
Who?
Yeah, Ramiz Brahimaj.
Joe, I don't have a lot to comment on here. To me, it was just a man in great physical condition against a man who's already coming down the side of that hill.
Yeah. It was not a statement in there that Griffin can really sort of say much about. Can we talk about the Tresean Gore guillotine finish of Josh Fremd? I've never seen a guillotine finish like that. That was brutal.
Concerning, yeah. Ragdolled him.
Yeah, and he was like, he had him up in the air, like when he snatched in that guillotine, like almost like he was going to hit him with like a DDT or something. It was brilliant. So that was a nice finish, I thought. Haven't seen anything quite like that before. So fair play to Gore. I'm sure you'll fight some other no mark in the middleweight division before facing one of those unranked beasts hanging around. Speaking of those unranked beasts, Roman Dolidze defeats Phil Hawes by KO TKO. It shouldn't have gone on that far though, should it? Dolidze had it's kind of like a knee bar in this awkward position, and Hawes' right knee went out. Oof. It was horrible. You see him limping. Dolidze let go and was just like, "Oh, I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry." And for some reason, Dan Miragliotta sees him limping away after his submission. Dolidze going like, "Oh, sugar, I'm sorry." And he's just like, "Well, no, you haven't finished him yet." And then Dolidze had to keep going. And the finish up against the cage, where he landed 3 concussive blows on the way down on Phil Hawes. Brutal finish for Dolidze.
Yeah, Hawes didn't need to go out like that.
No.
It was a shame.
Yeah, really quite grim, wasn't it? Dolidze should be ranked, I feel like. Should take maybe one of those higher rankings at middleweight.
Well, unfortunately for him, Phil Hawes is, similar position in the setup to him, as in he's just been kind of smoking fools on the prelims. A win like this, it doesn't really announce you to the world.
But I don't know. It's a very impressive record that Dolidze's got. 11-1. It's pretty impressive for Dolidze to get to that level.
I guess he's ready for, the Brad Tavares, Chris Curtis.
Chris Curtis, Joaquin Buckley, Tavares, that sort of murky. That's the start of the dark waters where it's just like, how far are these guys going to go? But yeah, I guess maybe it's hard to say too much considering the nature of the victory. Also at light heavyweight, Khalil Roundtree, one of Tom's least favourite fighters, defeats Dustin Jacoby by split decision. I think we both gave it to Jacoby 2 rounds to 1. People were very angry about this, including one guy in the crowd who Roundtree told to shut up, and Bisping seconded that on the mic. Tom, would you have been yelling at Khalil Roundtree for this win?
I would not after what he did to that. Was it that Lithuanian fella, Budauskas, the one he checked his knee, that teep kick?
Yeah, teep to the knee, split him in half, basically. Horrendous. Terrible.
Yeah, especially not given that Roundtree was only growing in stature as this fight went on. To me, I had this looking like a pretty comfortable kind of kickboxing win for Jacoby. Quietly rumbling away, Dustin Jacoby, in this manner. He's been too much for most guys with that evasive style, but Roundtree, he started spamming those big overhands, those big shots, and they were wearing on Jacoby. Definitely, if the fight went to another round, you'd favour Roundtree going forwards. So on that kind of metric that we've introduced recently on Holding I think you could perhaps give extra credit to your man Roundtree to push him over the line.
Maybe. Yeah, it's interesting as well that Jacoby took that fight when he's ranked 13th, and now he's probably going to lose that ranking and Roundtree will take it. it's just one of those divisions as well where like you could easily slip into the top 10 without people even really realizing. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, oh great, now I have to face Krylov. You'll lose that, and then like, slip back down to that sort of 15 to 10 range. And then some, Russian bloke you've never seen before with the Abraham Lincoln beard is matched up against you, and you're like, oh Jesus Christ, I've got to face this dude. It's one of those divisions, Tom. You know those divisions. Should we look ahead to Saturday, Tom? Unless you got something else you want to point out from this card.
I don't, Joe. It's one of those kind of lulls we're experiencing in the UFC right now.
The Chase Hooper finish. Chase Hooper got finished by Steve Garcia. Did you see this? I've got a question here about Chase Hooper. His striking was just not very good. He's quite an interesting, tricky grappler, but wasn't able to get it to the mat, and Garcia just blasted through him. What is the point of Chase Hooper being in the UFC when he's this young and this underdeveloped? Like, I think that this is something that the UFC should really angle away from. Like, why? Like, you've got that what's his name, Raul Rosas Jr., who got booked for UFC 282, who's 18 years old. Like, I watched Rosas Jr.'s fight on the Contender Series, and I thought he looked good, looked like a good athlete, like a smart fighter, but is there really much need for him to be in the UFC at this stage? Like,
I think it's fine. I mean, there are some success stories and some failures when you look through. Of course, one of those success stories we're going to get onto quite shortly in Sean O'Malley, but then you have the likes of, the young Armenian
Shabazian,
yeah. So it's a kind of poison chalice. It can be, or it can be the platform to success for a lifetime.
That's true.
If you gather that prominence, if you show that skill at some stage, you should be given the chance. You shouldn't be held back just because of your age. However, Chase Hooper, we've seen him run into this kind of roadblock more than once now. Don't need to see that happen again. So same for Shabazian.
Yeah, I think there would be some merit in the UFC letting these guys go for a few years and then taking a look at them again. Like, even if like they've got like a winning record in the UFC, like what would be the harm in Hooper going off and testing free agency and fighting in a couple different fight organizations for a few years? Like, even if it is somewhere like Bellator or the PFL, something like that, where they can sort of get that bit more seasoning and then come back and also make more of a name for yourself. Like, do you want your name to be like, oh, I remember seeing this guy get fucking mullered, in the Apex? Like, not really. So, I don't know. I feel like, honestly, the UFC should be a little bit more discerning. Like, if there's a really exceptional case, like, I even look at someone like Muhammad Makayev at flyweight, who's now ranked at flyweight. But if he hits a couple roadblocks at flyweight, what would be the problem in saying, like, yeah, maybe go to Cage Warriors, get a couple wins there, and then come back in 2 years' time? I don't need to see these. I know that they have this delusional thing in their head of like, I am going to be a world champion, and you need that. You need that to become a top fighter. Particularly Makayev, who's saying like, I'm going to beat John Jones's record of being the youngest fighter. I just wish that people didn't fixate on him becoming the youngest champion. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's being a champion regardless at any age is incredible. Like, I don't see this need to be this record breaker, basically.
I feel like it would be unreasonable to stifle these guys, though, Joe. Like, are you going to say Jude Bellingham shouldn't have left the championship? Should he not be in the England team now? You have to give these chance the chance to prosper. And getting on to prospering, Joe. Last Saturday, we saw Sean O'Malley beat Petr Yan. Yeah. You had a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
There's been a few events since then. O'Malley, obviously being the prodigal son of this very discussion, a man who got the rocket from the UFC and has gone to the headlines. He does have one hater in Joe Greenwood. You thought he lost the fight to Petr Yan.
Yes.
You were going to watch it again. The listeners have been blowing up the email address trying to find out what you have to say. Are you ready to reveal the results of your second watching?
Yes. So I rewatched the fight. I scored the fight 29-28 for Petr Yan. And in fact, after watching it again, more inclined to a 30-27 Yan than I am to a 29-28 O'Malley. That is my main takeaway from it. You cited last week the quantitative
significant strikes. Yeah.
The quantitative significant strikes of O'Malley in that third round. 44 or something? Something like that?
Uh-huh.
Bro, there were not 44 significant strikes in that round. There was a lot of O'Malley pumping out this left-hand jab onto Yan's arms. And then there was times where Yan took him down and O'Malley
absolutely
was hitting
that was a key component of O'Malley's victory.
Listen to what I'm saying.
No, but Joe, sorry, you're saying that the fact that he blocks shots, the light shots at range, was a credit to Yan?
No, I'm not saying it's a credit to either of them. It's a credit to no one. To me, that's nothing. That's not damage.
If you make a man block a shot and it doesn't get through,
but he blocked the shot.
No, I think that still has to be credited with something.
No, no.
Yeah,
no,
because it stops in the same way that like control time on the mat. Even if you don't get any damage off, it's credited. If you're throwing strikes, that means the other opponent has to cover up and cannot implement their own game. You have to be credited with that.
O'Malley was then there were the clinch positions where O'Malley's about to be taken down, and O'Malley's throwing like those rubbish hammer fists from the side that do no damage, that do no significant damage, that were then credited as significant strikes. Tom, I'm not having it. In terms of significant damaging strikes in that third round, it was even. It was even of like, O'Malley, he landed this really nice single straight right hand that landed on Yan. And then about 10 seconds later, Yan landed this lovely 1-2 combo to get back at him. It was even in terms of significant strikes. If you score that third round for O'Malley, I'm absolutely fine with it. I'm just not having, but he landed 44 significant strikes to Jan's 20, whatever it was, his number. The quality of those significant strikes was not enough for me to then overwhelmingly score it for him. Again, I'm not against O'Malley winning this fight. The first round is close, I gave it to Yan. The second round, for Yan. The third round is close, I gave it to O'Malley.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Well,
that was my main takeaway.
That's the journey you've been on since leaving that event myself. I don't know what's going on, how Facebook's trackers are working now, Joe, but it's just non-stop. I'm getting bombarded with O'Malley fan club memes.
Are you really?
So I've been indoctrinated. I've been accepted as one.
Oh
and
God.
In that universe, it was an ass whooping for O'Malley. So
I've seen a lot of comments where people going like, I don't know what people are debating here. It's a clear win. There's no clear win either way. There's no clear win.
Yeah,
either way.
It seems to be quite polarizing. O'Malley feels like it was comfortable. It was he ass whooped that little midget, I think.
I mean, he seems to have now. I feel like it's unfair as well in the moment for people judging him for that post-fight promo, where it's just like, he's just been in a battle with Petr Yan. He's just won a split decision. You can't. There's no way I can ever know what he felt. There's no way we can ever know that. And for him to be like, oh my God, like kind of almost lost for words, I feel like that's normal. Okay.
Well, that's concussion, Joe. I think is what that is.
Oh, from the significant strikes that Petr Yan landed, yes.
Whereas O'Malley got worked. He had a tough fight. I think he took more damage than he did against anyone else, barring the injury that he suffered against Marlon Vera.
Yeah.
I don't think any argument can be made of that.
No.
But anyway, he's gone to rank 1, Joe. He's gone 10 slots up in the rankings.
Yeah. So why are we
level.
Why are we getting Cejudo versus Sterling instead? That's what apparently that's what they want to book as the co-main to Volkanovski versus Makhachev. So here, I've got my tinfoil hat on. Here is what the UFC is planning for next year. You have that as a co-main to Makhachev Volkanovski. Then you have the winner of that bantamweight fight face Volkanovski for the featherweight title. That is what I think they're trying to do.
That would be some bullshit, Joe.
That would be some bull.
Any messing around with bantamweight. It's the pristine division. None of that UFC hijinks. I mean, we're already getting some hijinks here, watching one man go 10 places up in the rankings from 11 to rank 1. That's, that is pretty harsh on Marlon Vera.
Yeah.
Who beat O'Malley and has beaten everybody else since, and yet can only get to 3 places behind him, Hartley.
Yeah, so for some reason. I mean, there was a fight that's been close to being announced that I'll tell you in a second, but if they're going to go down the Aljamain Cejudo route, you would have on a pay-per-view O'Malley versus Vera as a 5-round number 1 contender fight. Surely that would be what you would be thinking.
Fantastic.
That does sound fantastic. Do you want to know a fight that I know that you are definitely going to be excited for this? Apparently this is close to being in the works.
Close to being in the works. That's how good our sources are now.
This is in the works.
We know about it before they do, Joe.
Your boy, Merab Dvalishvili, is coming back. Apparently for a fight night main event against Ricky Simone. Come on, Ricky. Do it for Jose Aldo, please. Do it for this pod. Do it for all the MMA fans out there.
Set Simone on him. That's great.
Again, Ricky Simone gets to face Dvalishvili again. He already has a win over him.
Yeah.
I mean, if Ricky Simone wins
2 strikes, you're out, Joe. That's how it works.
Yeah, bro. Get out those rankings, Merab. Do not want to see you there. Anyway, just speaking about bantamweight, I just want to see a guy rack up some defenses of the belt. Like, is there anything? And I worry that Cejudo, with his weird little brain, is going to get that belt and he's going to be like, I want a lightweight title shot right now. And he's just like, no, Henry, no, please, face O'Malley. Please, face Sandhagen. I don't want this, please. I do worry that is the route that they're going to take. Right. Next weekend. Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos.
Not that fight, though.
What? All right, I'm going to just put it out there. Rodriguez is winning that by decision, and she is the number 1 contender for the winner of Esparza versus Zhang. That is what's going to happen in that fight. I'm not breaking it down. But Joe, what about stats? Do you have a technical breakdown? No, I'm going off feelings, okay? And I've said from day one that Rodriguez should have had a title fight. She should be facing Esparza at Madison Square Garden. They're screwing her, okay? They're screwing her. Rodriguez for the win over Lemos.
Lemos not got too much power against Rodriguez?
No. Rodriguez's movement, speed, fleet of foot. I think she'll get a decision win and a comprehensive one at that. Lemos is a decent fighter at strawweight, but I think Rodriguez is of a different caliber to her now and has elevated herself to title contender status. Marina, I do not want to know what your feelings are on the recent election in Brazil, as I do not want that to cloud my opinion of you as a fighter. Rodriguez, number 1 contender.
Joe, of course, referencing the picture of most of Brazil's MMA contingent with Jair Bolsonaro, who has just been dethroned.
Yes.
It would seem, at least.
By my boy Luke. No, it's official. Well, whether he accepts it.
Yes.
Whether he accepts it is something else. Yes.
Right.
What do you want to talk about on this card?
I think this is a middling card. There's nothing that's really stirring me deep in my loins. It'll be interesting to see Jailton Almeida again, see if he can keep that momentum going against a veteran in Maxime Grisham.
Yep.
Yes. I mean,
Mark
obviously
Madsen?
now. Well, yeah. I mean, just a bit about Almeida. He's 17-2 as it stands. Last time out, we saw a pretty thunderous display from him. You know, he could upset a few fellas up in those higher weight classes. Yeah,
he fights between light heavy and heavyweight. I'd like to see him just commit to light heavyweight personally before going to heavyweight. Tom, sorry I interrupted.
I think you summed it up. That's all he's worthy of at the moment, Almeida. Let's keep that momentum going. Then, yeah, I mean, on the co-main, we've got Neil Magny and Daniel Rodriguez, 2 ranked guys at welterweight. Obviously, D-Rod coming off a loss last time out.
No, he beat Li Jingliang. Remember when Li Jingliang weighed in at 170?
But did he beat him? Like,
For me,
did he?
no.
No, not. I think I think we both had that as a bit of a robbery. Certainly nothing I gave Rodriguez credit for. Magny obviously had a checked record of late. Which way are you leaning for that fight? Yeah.
I actually lean towards Magny. I lean towards, like, I think it's gonna be quite a jab heavy contest. And I think Magny, he's just a bit more fleet with his jab, and I think he can, outstrike Rodriguez just in terms of like frequency. I think damage wise, I'm not expecting a blood and guts battle here between these two.
I mean, D-Rod, he lands 7.75 strikes per minute.
Yeah.
To Magny's 4. Now, of course, in doing so, he absorbs a lot more strikes. So you just think that Magny will kind of melt him as the fight goes on?
I don't think he'll.
Too much.
I don't think he'll melt him, but I think it will be. It depends if Rodriguez puts takedowns in there, though.
Well, Magny, I would expect to work in some grappling.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. It depends who can dominate that space. Actually, maybe Rodriguez could, because he's a big block of a man, isn't he? So
big boy.
I might take this back. Actually, I might go with Rodriguez if he can chain some takedowns in.
The famous Greenwood U-turn is upon us.
Arnold Allen world champion and Magny with a win over Rodriguez. Yeah, I don't know. Again, it feels like but this fight for both of them is like a weird sort of like litmus test of just like how good are you actually. If Rodriguez like outworks Magny, you go like, okay, that's a very significant win. I feel like, whereas if Magny sort of beats D-Rod, it's like, okay, you're still that sort of upper level gatekeeper sort of fighter. Do you know what I mean? For welterweight.
I mean, I feel like we know that for Magny. We know the kind of bounds of his game. The question is whether he's slipping from that game. Whereas perhaps with D-Rod, he can kind of push on still. You wouldn't close the door on him and say he's never going to be in that top 10, top 5 even mix-up.
No, not yet.
But with a loss to Magny, then we'd know. That's what you said.
Yeah. That's what I would be leaning towards.
I agree with that. Now let me just pick out one other fight, which is stirring me a little bit. I'm seeing this on the UFC breakdown of the card. I'm not actually seeing it on the UFC's breakdown of the card. So I hope Wikipedia is more up to date than the official UFC website, because we've got Grant Dawson stepping in against Mark Madsen.
Yeah.
Now I think Dawson probably hasn't amassed much name recognition, but Madsen, of course, the former Olympic wrestler, 12-0 now in the UFC. Dawson, though, he deserves a bit more of a shine on him, Joe, because he's been kind of muddling along 2-3 fights a year. Yeah. He's not been losing those fights.
No.
18-1-1 now. Is there anything that you've seen from Dawson that stands out to you? What should the fans expect from a Grant Dawson fight?
The problem that I have with Dawson, and I think with a lot of these guys that have come through, is that like when you think about like those upper echelon fighters, is that they're extremely well rounded, but they have that one major skill where it's just like you just have to stay away from it, or they just specialize in it so well. And I think that is kind of a negative and a positive for Dawson, which is that like he's kind of so well rounded that it's just like, okay, he can kind of win from anywhere. But the fact is that like he doesn't have that standout thing. And I think someone against someone like a Mark Madsen, whose wrestling is so strong that he could kind of get sort of like ridden out here. Like Mark Madsen could just like dominate him for 15 minutes. My only thing that against that though was that, do you remember Mark Madsen's last fight against Vince Pichel? Or Pichel?
Yes, I do.
Where it was a poor performance where honestly, from about maybe 3 or 4 takedowns, Madsen just was sapped of any energy and was struggling to get any sort of takedown going, particularly in that second round.
Well, Joe, you're getting into more my thinking about this fight now. I think Grant Dawson's going to run through him.
Do you reckon?
I think he's going to run through him, yeah. I think he's going to finish him.
Just knockout, finish?
Well, this is just the thing. I mean, Dawson, starting out in his early career as an MMA artist, first 7 fights, he finished by submission victories. A lot of RNCs in there, an armbar too. After that, his next 3 wins came by TKO. Then he went back to a couple more submissions. And in his run in the UFC, he's been mixing them all together. Knockouts, decisions, and that RNC coming in again. I just feel that Madsen, yes, he does have the wrestling base, but it's not an MMA wrestling. I haven't seen him dominate wrestling exchanges in the way that you might feel an Olympian might. Of course, he calls himself the Olympian. That's actually his nickname. Never like it when guys do that.
No, same.
And yeah, 38 years old now. Dawson more than able to mix it in there. So you think about him tiring. I'm thinking another RNC after a scramble on the mat. I got a little lean that way, Joe. Yeah.
Listeners, stick your £5 on that onto a Grant Dawson RNC. You've convinced me, Tom. I'm going to go with a Grant Dawson win. Also, I feel like Dawson, what's his win streak? 9?
This would be 7 in the UFC.
7 in the UFC.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Overall record of 18-1.
And then, if he has that sort of win, you'd put him in there with someone like, Brad Riddell maybe?
I think 7-fight streak, there's no way you keep him out of the rankings anymore, is there?
No. I mean, who's 15th in the lightweight rankings?
Drew Dober's just been nudged up. But I feel like they've got bigger plans for him. Maybe a Conor McGregor matchup, something like that. Tony Ferguson and Conor round out. They're 13 and 14. Dan Hooker somehow. Still, I mean, God, that is.
That is. By the way, we're talking about, the pinnacle division of the UFC.
Yeah. And
that is the rankings. Like, it's just.
You want to hear the next 4 after that, though, Joe?
Go on, give it to me. This is going to make me happy.
Damir Ismagulov. Oh. Number 10, Jalen Turner. Oh. Number 9, Arman Sarukian. Number 8, Mateusz Gamrot.
Oh my God. Those guys, by the way, who are ranked above them, like
RDA, Chandler, Gaethje, Poirier.
You fall off that diving board. There's nowhere good for you to go. Like, could you imagine? Can you imagine, by the way, watching Gaethje versus Ismagulov and watching him just get jabbed up by Ismagulov, get taken down, just worked, and just get exhausted by him? Like,
I think he would have what he did to Tony Ferguson. I think that's what would happen to Gaethje.
Yeah,
and
I think
called
that's
off
fair.
On humanitarian rounds in the later
right.
part of the fight.
You mentioned a man who is in the UFC rankings, lightweight, number 13, Conor McGregor. Tom, I don't know if you saw this. Conor is no longer in the USADA testing pool.
They don't have the equipment to keep up with him anymore. It's gone too far off the scale.
I know. He's officially joined the X-Men, considering what is going on with his genealogy right now. He's no longer in the USADA testing pool. So then let me ask this question, Tom. Why is he still ranked?
It's beyond me. I can't answer it. It's a pretense that we insist on continuing with. I mean, so that means Conor cannot fight for at least 6 months. Is that right?
6 months. He has to start testing from today. If he started testing today, he'd be ready for April, May.
So are we saying he's going to fight Floyd Mayweather again?
I honestly think that Conor might fight one more time in the UFC.
And then Jake Paul.
And then a Jake Paul. Or it might be the case that Conor, I don't know how many fights he's got left on his deal. I think it might only be 2 or 3. That he might just come back, fight out those 2-3 fights, and then do his freak show fight, carnival fight things. Jake Paul, Floyd Mayweather, Nate Diaz in boxing, Anderson Silva in boxing. It might be one of those. I know, it's grim, isn't it? It's grim.
Yeah, I don't want to continue talking about Conor McGregor too much more, to be honest.
Well, let's go even further. Anderson Silva lost at the weekend to Jake Paul in a boxing match. And 47 years old. I watched the fight. In his run at the end of the UFC, 1 win, 7 losses. And what we kind of learnt is that the last 10 years of Anderson Silva, he's very consistent. If he fights his fight, that's what he's going to do. He's just going to fight his fight. And if he loses, oh well. And if he wins, great. But he doesn't seem too bothered about changing anything. It's a bit sad that this is how guys have to make their money post-UFC. This is how they have to get their roses. This is how they get their biggest paydays. You know, when he had the boxing match with Tito, when he had the boxing match with, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. These were big paydays for Anderson. I'm chuffed for him, and I'm happy. And I'm happy he's getting a great send-off to the end of his career. But you know what, Anderson? Just do the exhibition boxing now. You know, be on the undercut. Be the co-main event to all of those Floyd Mayweather exhibition fights in Dubai. I don't need to see you in a competitive boxing match again. And nor do I need to see Nate Diaz in this sort of thing. I just think it's a bit sad. And it's not sport. I'll just say it's not a sport.
Not if Jake Paul wins, anyway.
No, of course not. Of course not. So yeah. Anyway, Tom, is there anything else you want to bring up? Anything else that's just sparked in your mind that you want to bring up?
No, Joe. I guess I'm feeling a bit bereft right now. You know,
yeah.
Cut adrift at sea. You know, like I was really getting excited for Kattar versus Allen. I endured some slop to get to it, and then seeing another big fight get taken away from a knee injury, and another kind of fighter who's in a position that they can't really perhaps reach the same level after injury.
Yeah.
Harkening back also to TJ Dillashaw the prior weekend, and of course Tom Aspinall earlier in the year. It's just one too many, Joe. I'm feeling a bit glum.
Yeah, for sure. There's a bit of news I've just seen here that I want to just bring up to actually... I don't know how you feel about this. Apparently George St. Pierre is no longer under UFC contract. Quote, I can do whatever I want. And... like... Okay.
Is that Jake Paul? Are we thinking Jake Paul again?
It'll be a Jake Paul, maybe Anderson. But again, it's like we could have had GSP versus Anderson in the UFC when it mattered most. Like, we could have had that. But, you know, GSP didn't really want to go up. Dana didn't really want to make the fight. We could have had Anderson versus John Jones when it mattered. You know. But again, Anderson didn't want to go up. Dana didn't really want to do it. Why do people think that this is compelling now? You know, it's quite clearly a cash grab at this stage. And I mean, I almost want to, at the end of this episode, to make a declaration. I do not want to talk about these fights anymore, and I do not want to talk about Conor McGregor anymore until he has a fight booked in the UFC. Like, can we make this a rule for the podcast from now on? It may cause us to drop down in our Google search, SEO, whatever nonsense, but I kind of want to just not talk about these things anymore.
Makes me feel pretty glum, Joe. At least until somebody beats Jake Paul, I think we will avoid discussing it.
Fair enough. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a wonderful time. A rather miserable talk in which we've been a bit snippy with each other. Sorry.
Joe, we've just been divided. You know, it's Romeo and Juliet now. It's I'm in the house of Amali, and you are pro-Russian.
You are the Bolsonaro to my Lula. I understand. It's let's wrap it up on that note. Thank you so much for joining us, listeners. You can contact us at holdonbrother69@gmail.com, and we'll be back next week for the big one, the preview: Adesanya versus Pereira.
Muito bom.
I cannot wait. Cannot wait. Do you want to take a guess at who Pereira voted for in the election?
Do not.
Listeners, we'll be back next week.
Bye, everybody.
Back next Wednesday or something. Goodbye.